All right, welcome back to the First Team Fantasy Podcast. We've got a lot on the plate today. In this episode, I think we are going to do the Thursday night preview, the injuries, and the morning games. We'll see how fast we can get through the morning games, and we might break it up into 2 episodes with the remaining games. So, starting off with the Thursday night game. This one was actually really good, probably the best Thursday night game of the year. Far from our expectations of what the Seattle offense would do. They went into Dallas and gave the Cowboys a good scare, to say the very least.
Yeah.
The Cowboys ended up winning 41-35, but boy, was it a big day for the Seattle Seahawks. Geno Smith to start off, 23 for 41, 334 yards, 3 touchdowns in the air, 1 interception, ran the ball twice for 6 yards and a touchdown, had just about 31 fantasy points. I cannot say that I was expecting Geno to go into Dallas and perform like this, especially after the performance we saw against the Niners, but hey, I guess we can cut all those Deron Bland DPOY talks.
No.
DK Metcalf. Oh yeah. Go ahead.
DK Metcalf went off.
Absolutely destroyed them. It was far beyond anything we thought was going to happen. 6 catches on 8 targets for 134 yards and 3 touchdowns. Hopefully, you went ahead and started DK Metcalf. Aside from whatever doubt we may have had, you may have had, anyone may have had.
Yeah.
Because he went absolutely off. 37.4 in a PPR setting, and that's if you don't have any bonuses for that extremely long 73-yard touchdown he had. Yeah, DK definitely had a game-winning day. Jackson Smith-Njigba was surprisingly the second in the receiver room. Got 11 targets, the most out of anyone in Seattle this week. Caught 7 of them for 62 yards, giving him 13.2 fantasy points. Not the most spectacular day, but far beyond what I thought that he would get.
Yeah.
So I'd say that was a pretty good day, and that, 11 targets in a must-win game, that gives me a lot of hope for him moving forward. Tyler Lockett had a moderate day. Caught 5 of his 8 targets for 47 yards, giving him 9.7 points. Beyond that, Noah Fant was the only relevant pass catcher. Caught 3 of his 4 targets for 43 yards, 7.3 points. Not that you were looking to start him in any regards, but that was that. Jake Bobo caught his weekly pass for 9 yards. So good for him. Zach Charbonnet actually got injured in this game fairly late, I think early 4th quarter around there. Was doing fairly well before that. It was rough for them running the ball through like the first 2 quarters, but in the second half, they really started to come alive. 19 attempts for 60 yards and a touchdown. Also caught 1 of his 2 targets for 39 yards. So he had 16.9 points. Much, much, much better than we thought. There were probably positions that you were in where you didn't have a choice but to start him with the Ken Walker injury if you had that handcuff. And if you did, good for you. You came up pretty big. When he went down, because he played 42 snaps, 61% of the team's snaps. He was replaced by DJ Dallas, who did absolutely nothing. Ran the ball 1 time for 6 yards and caught neither of his 2 targets. So, honestly, if Charbonnet and Walker are to miss,
no.
No. So, yeah. I think that Seattle is just going to pass the ball a whole lot more if that is the case. But hopefully Ken Walker is working his way back to being healthy. He's missed 2 weeks now, so yeah, hopefully he's trending towards playing, because if they're going to be missing Charbonnet, it's going to be ugly next week.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's about all. Jason Myers missed a field goal, which would have put him at like 8 or 9 fantasy points. Not exactly sure how far the field goal was, but of course he missed it, so he ends with 4. And that is quite literally all for the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, and I mean, we admit our mistakes, and I had Charbonnet and the Seattle receivers as my sits of the week, and they went absolutely nuclear. But like Schiff had mentioned, after their performance last week and how the Cowboys have been playing, it just did not look like a favorable matchup, especially for Thursday night, but props to Seattle, especially Geno. He was completely able to get it done. And the Cowboys did as well on their side. Every single player that we would have started for the Cowboys had monster weeks. Starting with Dak, who was 29 of 41, 299 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 7 carries for 23 yards, 28.26 fantasy points. Dak has been an absolute monster. And he was getting drafted in, fantasy drafts, but right around that like quarterback 10, maybe even the backup for some of your fantasy teams. But he's become a top 3 fantasy quarterback. Like along with Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts, just the consistency we've seen from Dak has been incredible. Tony Pollard didn't have the most efficient day on the ground, but he got an insane amount of volume, 20 carries for 68 yards. He got in the end zone, had 4 targets out the backfield, caught 3 for 15 yards, 17.3. He's obviously someone we're starting every week as well. And CeeDee Lamb, again, does CeeDee Lamb things. 17 targets, caught 12 of them, 116 yards, a touchdown, 2 carries on the ground for 30 yards, 32.6. There are teams I've seen that have DK and CeeDee Lamb, and if you did and started both of them...
Yeah, if you happened... Just imagine someone had, for some reason, DK, CD, Tony, Charbonnet, and one
Dak.
of the quarterbacks.
Yeah.
That's just... You can just chill for the rest of the week. You won.
Yeah. And Brandon Cooks is obviously the wide receiver 2 here. He played 90% of snaps. He's still not getting a crazy amount of targets. He was only targeted 4 times, but he caught all 4 of them for 45 yards and a touchdown. So he finished 16.5 fantasy points. No other wide receiver was even really worth mentioning fantasy-wise. I mean, Jalen Tolbert had a catch. Keontae Turpin, had a catch. Michael Gallup played 46% of snaps, was only targeted once, and did not receive a catch. For anyone still lingering on if Michael Gallup would take that back, it's not going to happen. Brandon Cooks.
No, they got Brandon Cooks for a reason.
Yeah, he is the clear-cut wide receiver 2 there. And when Dak's throwing as efficiently as he is, Brandon Cooks will reap some of the benefit. Jake Ferguson. Again, something else I was wrong on. I did not think Brandon Cooks and Jake Ferguson could both eat at the same time. When Dak's throwing touchdowns to everyone, they absolutely can. Jake Ferguson was targeted 8 times, caught 6 of them for 77 yards and a touchdown, 19.7 fantasy points. And you remember, I had forgotten, I was trying to take Jake Ferguson out of my Dynasty lineup. I accidentally left him in for the start. And I'm going to be happy I did.
Yeah, I rolled with DK and Charbonnet, and I'm feeling quite the same way.
Yeah. But
I was playing against CeeDee Lamb, so...
Oh, you needed to then.
I needed DK.
Yeah.
I needed that.
Yeah, and I mean, to end it off, all good things come to an end. Dallas's defense, we were high on, and they had their worst fantasy output of the season, giving us -1 point. So...
Yeah, that one hurt.
But all the players did incredible.
Though.
Brandon Aubrey got 15.
15 points from Brandon Aubrey. I had Dallas' defense, unfortunately, but I had Brandon Aubrey, so I got a combined 14 out of my kicker and defense. I will survive with that.
Yes, absolutely.
So, yeah. With that, we are going to go right into the injury report. This I have from Deepak Chona on Twitter. His @ is SportMDAnalysis. So if you want to check him out, he has some pretty good injury tweets, and that's what we're going to go off of today. So for the Jets, Breece Hall, it says data projects 75% chance of playing. Young running backs don't typically see stats dip with hamstrings if they've logged full practice, which he has. So although he is listed as questionable, it seems that he should be good to go and in full capacity at that. Jonathan Taylor, as we know, he is out. This says average 5 weeks. Avoiding IR suggests week 16 likely as target return. So if you make it to the championship, you might have Jonathan Taylor back. So it is looking like if you held on to Zach Moss, league-winning stuff right there.
Yeah.
For the Jaguars, Travis Etienne. Data projects two-thirds chance of playing. Running backs tend to play at full per-touch efficiency, but average fewer touches playing through rib contusions. So just imagining the fact that a running back with a rib injury, we've seen just, for example, T. Higgins. We've seen him miss time. Wide receivers considerably have less contact every play than a running back. I think we can agree.
Yeah.
So that is definitely something that you need to pay attention to. It is on Monday night, which makes it much more difficult to kind of weather, because it might be one of those T. Higgins things. Abe mentioned that he's like, I'm scared of starting him because what if he gives me a T. Higgins game?
Yeah.
Well, the Jaguars, they're battling for the number 1 seed in the AFC. Obviously, they're going to need Travis Etienne. I'd like to believe he's going to play, but with the rib injury, exactly. So it is dangerous waters, especially the part of the fantasy season that we are in. Moving on to Keenan Allen. Data projects 60% chance of playing, 15% production hit on average for wide receivers with a quad contusion. I would like to imagine Keenan Allen is also playing. It's a bit more tough to discern due to the fact that the Chargers are kind of in a hole right now. Their coach is in the hot seat, though, so I'd imagine the Chargers are playing to win. They're playing against the Patriots, who they did not win a game in the month of November, as Adrian pointed out to me. They're not playing well right now. If Keenan Allen play, he's one that I'm less nervous about, even though they don't have anyone there.
Yeah.
I still see him, if he plays, he's going to get probably 10 plus targets.
Yeah.
Tank Dell, another really tough one. Data projects 2/3 chance of playing, mild performance it projected, but bigger concern is re-injury risk up to 15 to 20%. And they're going up against the Broncos at home. Big game for both teams. It's really tough. It's something you definitely have to keep an eye on. This was tweeted 3 hours ago, and it is now 2:40 on Saturday. I know Tank Dell is probably at this point in the season a big part of people's lineup, so it's definitely something you have to keep a close eye on from here until tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
And have somebody ready to go for that pivot. Cooper Kupp for the Rams. Week 12 video suggests new injury to other ankle, but practiced fully 3 times, so data favors full pre-injury production. Cooper Kupp, he has been tough. Like we say, he's been hard to keep out of lineups. This week, they're playing the Browns. Honest to God, if you were ever going to bench Cooper Kupp, I'd say this is the week. Devon Achane, likely playing. Data favors return to pre-injury workload and efficiency, but handling so far suggests he will see fewer touches.
Yeah.
If there's anything we know from Devon Achane, it is he can do a lot with a little. So going up against one of the worst defenses in the NFL with the Commanders. I think he will be a good play, regardless. So this is a very big one. Saints Chris Olave. Most concussions miss 1 week, but he has the chance to clear today if he's active. Data favors 100% production. Another one you have to watch extremely closely. He will be the only viable receiver if he plays in New Orleans.
Yeah.
Rashid Shaheed will miss this game 100%.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, if you have Chris Olave, definitely something you're watching intently. If you need a tight end this week, it's something I'm watching extremely intently because that Juwan Johnson and Taysom Hill, both their value goes through the roof if Chris Olave does not play.
Yeah.
Since we're talking about tight ends, we have Trey McBride from the Cardinals, 2/3 chance of playing. Tight end groin strains don't cause performance hits, but do carry re-aggravation risk. He has been one of the better tight end plays through the last few weeks, so this could be fairly big. Marquise Brown, to be determined. Data favors sitting, but he played last week without hit. Gut leans slightly towards playing. What would you say with Marquise Brown, given this? He hasn't been. Last week was his best week with Kyler, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, if Hollywood does play, I'm starting him. If he does play, I'm starting him. Especially, we know this bye week is brutal. Absolutely brutal.
One thing just to keep in the back of your mind is they do have a bye next week. So maybe they do sit him with the injury and the fact that, might as well.
They should be tanking.
Weeks to heal it.
I don't know why. They should be tanking.
It's hard to tell what they're doing there.
Yeah.
For the Browns, Amari Cooper is playing. Given chest contusion from the end of week 12, data projects moderate performance hit. If we're being honest, it's been rough for Amari Cooper anyways. They will be playing Joe Flacco at quarterback.
Yes.
So we'll see how that goes. Yeah. For the Texans, Noah Brown to be determined. Data projects 60% chance of sitting. Late week downgrades from limited practice to do not practice equal bad news. If active, would expect stats to dip.
Yeah.
Sit Noah Brown.
Yeah.
It's not looking good. For the Eagles, Dallas Goedert leans towards week 14 return. Average 5 to 7 weeks, and he's only at 4 right now. So.
He fractured his arm?
Yes, he did.
How's he going to play in 4 weeks, man?
I don't know. He's currently listed as doubtful anyways, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd look elsewhere. Also for the Texans, Dalton Schultz is out. So, that's a big one.
Yeah.
For the Jets, Aaron Rodgers is out, I did see, but I'd say if he comes back, it'll be the following week, due to the fact that when I looked, he was listed as out. So, seeing people play from the doubtful tag, like Max Crosby, was actually the first one last week.
Mm-hmm.
Keep that in mind. In week 12, he was the first one to play with a doubtful tag. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is coming back from an out designation. So, on to Aaron Jones. Data favors sitting in week 14, returning in week 15, near pre-injury efficiency but lower workload. Oh no, Aaron Jones is missing another week. Are we surprised? No. For the Browns, this is actually pretty big. For the Browns, Myles Garrett comment suggests that the shoulder is partially dislocated, painful and elevated re-injury risk, but typically played through. Wow. That man is different. And then some more defensive guys, Treylon Burks. Progression suggests chance to play. If active, expect 100% production. Ezekiel Elliott, data favors playing, but fewer touches. Expect more Ramondre Stevenson. Okay. And that is all I have for the injuries. Quite a bit. So prepare yourself, especially with the 6 teams that we have on bye this week.
Yeah.
So that, along with a pretty hefty injury list. Good luck, everybody.
Yeah, but I just want to add, that was very cool. We'll in the description we'll add this guy's Twitter handle, just so if you want to drop him a follow. I actually like that injury report a lot more than normally. We go to like a Bleacher Report, and all they tell you is, oh, Rashid Shaheed has a thigh injury, he's out. This guy kind of adds some analytics behind it to some of these questionable tags, to where even if this guy plays, maybe his production will be down. Research has shown this. So it kind of gives us more of an insight other than, oh, this guy's questionable.
Yeah, some actual insight from an actual doctor rather than us just reading a designation with the part listed. So yeah.
Yeah, but that'll kick us right into our Sunday morning game previews. My first one is the Dolphins at the Commanders. And the Dolphins side of the ball is very easy. The Commanders are not good on defense. We are obviously throwing out Tua, Tyreek, Jalen Waddle. And you know what? The only reason I was skeptical about Achane was because against the Raiders, it seemed like they threw him out before he was ready to return, and he re-aggravated very quickly and has been out since then. But if Mike McDaniels is saying he's actually ready to go this game with the bye weeks, and like Schiff mentioned, what he's shown he can do on limited carries and limited involvement, I do like Achane, and obviously I like Raheem Mostert this week as well. Your Dolphins starters are such a high-powered offense. You have to start them every week. The Commanders side of the ball is a bit more tricky to me. Ever since Jalen Ramsey has come back, this Dolphins defense has actually improved pretty heavily. They're currently 11th against the pass, only giving up 212 yards, and they're 6th against the rush, giving up 93 yards. We know Sam Howell likes to throw the ball to no end. Or I should say Eric Bieniemy, but Sam Howell is the one throwing it to no end. The Sam Howell start?
I mean, I don't hate it.
No, neither do I, because even if they go down big early, that just means they're going to be throwing it more. And he's proven that he can throw the ball, against, I don't want to say any defense, because he's had a couple really dud weeks, but Sam Howell is getting better.
Yeah, I'd agree. I like the Sam Howell start this week.
Yeah, I like the Sam Howell start. The Brian Robinson start, again, it's tough because there's so many bye weeks, but I don't know, because the Dolphins are very stout against the run. I don't think he'll have much success there. What his involvement in the passing game, that's what's going to determine if he has a good fantasy week. Antonio Gibson is returning this week. Brian Robinson is obviously better. I think due to the buys, I don't know how deep some teams are. If you have the luxury of sitting him, I'd say go ahead, but most teams, you're going to have to start him and hope he gets a rushing touchdown or, 3 to 5 catches out the backfield for a decent amount of yards. When we get to the receivers, Scary Terry you have to start, but it's weird because I'm almost least excited for Scary Terry out of the 3 receivers.
He's averaging his worst yards per game for his career.
Yeah.
Which is surprising because, you see how much they throw the ball.
Yeah, but they just spread it out so much. And so, again, with the buys, you have Scary Terry, Jahan Dotson, and Curtis Samuel. I don't know who I like more between Jahan Dotson and Curtis Samuel. Dotson's been a bit more consistent, but Curtis Samuel has shown in random games where Bieniemy's just like, we're going to hyper-target you. I think Dotson's a safer play, but Curtis Samuel has a higher boom. But that's a risk you'll have to take if you decide to start them. And then Logan Thomas. He had a bad week last week, but he has been super consistent. I feel like he's a guy like, for example, if Juwan Johnson's still out there and Chris Olave doesn't, even if Chris Olave does play, I like Juwan Johnson a little more than Logan Thomas this week. But Logan Thomas, he shouldn't lose you your fantasy week if you start him this week.
Yeah, I'd agree.
But that's really it. I'm not looking to start Commanders defense, obviously Dolphins defense. It's right around there. Consider it.
Maybe. I mean, Sam Howell does lead the league in pretty sure sacks and interceptions, which both add up for the defense. So,
yeah.
I mean, yeah, it shouldn't be a bad play.
Yeah.
They did just lose, I think, their best pass rusher, though, in Jalen Phillips for the rest of the year.
That was sad to see. Yeah, they did.
Yeah, it was. On to the Broncos going into Houston to play the Texans. The over-under in this one is 47.5. Texans are favored by 3, which makes sense. These teams are fairly equal, honestly. Which at this point in the season, to see both the Houston Texans and the Denver Broncos sitting at 6-5, battling for a spot, I guess not only in the wild card, but in their respective divisions, is pretty insane to think about.
Yeah.
Now, we'll go over the Broncos side of the ball first. Right now, they are on a 5-game win streak, which, like I said, is pretty incredible. Currently scoring 22.4 points per game, passing for 185 per game, which isn't the greatest, but rushing for 115, and giving up 25.5 points to the other team per game. Houston is giving up 95.1 yards on the ground per game, which, we're not used to seeing from the Houston Texans. I've talked about this before, but they are fairly stout against the runs. It does not necessarily mean that they are top tier against fantasy running backs.
Yeah.
I think Javonte Williams is still a decent play. Honestly, we saw it was scary last week because we saw him go out with an injury, but he did come back in that game, still played 70% of the snaps. I think Javonte's a good start.
Yeah.
I think Javonte is a good start. Samaje Perine, on the other hand, isn't necessarily someone, unless you're really strapped for a running back. We know he has involvement in the pass game, which makes him viable. But, I mean, the last 3 weeks, 33, 36, and 27% of the snaps. He's not out there that much. But it could be a boat race.
Yeah.
It very well could be. Either of these teams' defense decide to show up. We've seen the Texans' offense just explode and go crazy in games. So if we get anything akin to that, the Broncos are going to have no choice but to keep up. And when they're in that mode, Samaje Perine then becomes extremely viable as a running back. Mm-hmm. Now, do we know whether or not that's going to happen? No. Which makes the play risky.
Yeah.
We can't go out and say it's not. But with that factor and that possibility, I think Samaje Perine could be a play this week that could end up saving you if you're hurting for a running back.
Yeah.
As far as the pass catchers go, and we talked about how I said Russ was, I like the Russ start this week. The Texans are giving up 252 yards through the air, which is far more than the Broncos are passing for. But as we said, Texans aren't necessarily very generous on the ground. So Courtland Sutton's been good. Mm-hmm. Jerry Jeudy is healthy, apparently. I think Courtland Sutton should be a great play this week. Jerry Jeudy, on the other hand, if you're in a position where you have multiple receivers with this dreaded bye week 13, I think Jerry Jeudy is a decent play.
Yeah.
I think, that's about it, though. We've moved on past the point of any relevance that Marvin Mims may have.
Yeah.
And Adam Troutman, I don't think is going to be a thing. But Will Lutz, on the other hand, the Broncos do happen to kick a lot of field goals, so I think he's a good option. And I don't know about the Denver defense in Houston. I'd just prefer to stay away from that this week.
Yeah.
But moving over to the Texans side of the ball, like I said, Noah Brown is questionable, not looking like he's going to. It's not favoring him playing, and if he does, it's not favoring him being productive. Tank Dell is the really big one. If he does not play, because they don't have Dalton Schultz, so it's going to be Brevin Jordan as the starting tight end. I can't sit here and tell you to play Brevin Jordan, but if you're hurting that bad, it's an option.
Yeah.
It is an option. I honestly believe Nico Collins is going to have huge involvement in this game. The Broncos, like I said, if you look at their statistics, it shows that they are giving up 155 yards on the ground. It's 32nd, dead last in the NFL. That hasn't been the case through the last 5 weeks, which they've been winning games. They've been a lot better, and the defense, or the pass defense as well, it shows they're giving up 233 yards per game, which is 22nd. They have been a lot more stout these past 5 weeks. Does that mean that I'm shying away from starting the Texans, who have been great? No. I'm still starting Nico Collins. If Tank Dell does play, I'm starting Tank Dell. CJ Stroud, you have to start.
Yeah.
When it gets to the running backs, last week we talked about how it was Damian Pierce's first game back. Does that necessarily mean that in this week they're going to give him more of the snaps in his? I don't believe so. We've seen a lot more efficiency out of Devin Singletary in his time as the running back one there than we saw out of Dameon Pierce. So I think Devin Singletary is a good play in this one.
Yeah.
I don't think shying away from him. Dameon Pierce is looking like the handcuff at this point that Devin Singletary was at one point in the season.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Still not starting Matt Amendola.
I was going to bring it up if you didn't. He's freaking back for another week. Are you kidding me? There's no one else you can call? That's the guy. You're still like, we'll roll with him. Dude.
I would rather call Sebastian Janikowski out of retirement. But seriously.
That was insane.
There you go. You just finished a natty light off the cat. Come on. We got your plane ticket.
Yeah.
But yeah, that'll be all for this game. Move right on to the next one.
Yeah, and our next one is going to be the Lions at the Saints. As we'd mentioned in the injury report, no Rashid Shaheed for the Saints. Chris Olave with a concussion is questionable. To start with the Lions side of the ball, the Saints are pretty solid against the pass. They're 7th in the league. They only give up 196 yards. They're fairly generous on the ground, giving up 124, which is 23rd in the league. For the Lions, we have the obvious starts. The Sam Laporta, the Amon-Ra, the Jahmyr Gibbs, and David Montgomery. Like, at this point, you can't keep Jahmyr Gibbs on the bench.
No.
Jared Goff, especially if Olave does miss, this Saints team is going to be very shorthanded. We've seen the Saints not really be able to do anything on offense, and the Lions' specialty on defense is against the run. They're weak against the pass, but if the Saints have no weapons to pass to, it could get ugly for the Saints. So
it's going to be a lot of dump-offs to Alvin Kamara this week.
Yeah, Jared Goff, I feel comfortable starting only because of how banged up the Saints are, and I just think the Lions will have ample opportunity on offense, and he will be able to get something done. I'm not starting Jamison Williams or Josh Reynolds. Not yet. I'm higher on Jamison Williams at this point, but I'm still not considering starting either of them. The Detroit defense, I'm thinking about this week, just because I've seen games like this from Derek Carr where just nothing is working. Even if they don't cause a bunch of turnovers and things like that, the Saints are not going to score a lot of points in this game. At least I think. I do not think the Saints will be that successful. And to go to the Saints, we're obviously not starting Derek Carr. We are obviously starting Alvin Kamara. If Chris Olave does play, I'm 1000% rolling him out. We saw when Shaheed went out, we thought it was going to be A.T. Perry getting more involvement. It was Lynn Bowden, who I am not starting. Not starting any of them.
No.
Taysom Hill, I am absolutely rolling this week because he's going to have to be involved. And the same with Juwan Johnson. And then Blake Grupe was questionable. They say he's going to play in this game. Again, he's been very good fantasy-wise. I'm just worried about the Saints' offense, but I'm still rolling him. I'm still rolling Blake Grupe. I mean, I guess I could take a peek at the waiver, but there may be better waiver options. I'm just not that high. It depends how high you are on thinking the Saints score, say, 15 points. You think they get 15 in this one?
Yeah.
Wow. And Derek Carr's a former Raider. I just don't. Yeah. Again, we'll have to see. I like Blake Grupe. He's been an incredible kicker. It's more so out of caution of how much is the Saints offense going to put out. But again, if you're high enough to think their offense can even, be somewhat efficient in this game, Blake Grupe is a good start. The Saints defense, not this week.
No, I'd agree. Okay. Texans wide receiver Tank Dell is expected to play.
There it is.
Go. My next game is the Falcons going into New York to take on, technically New Jersey to take on the Jets. The over-under in this one's 33.5, and Atlanta is favored by 2 points. The injuries in this one, Matt Collins is questionable. Breece Hall, Dalvin Cook, and Israel Abanikanda are all questionable. So, like every single New York Jets running back is listed with a questionable tag. But as we said, it seems like Breece Hall is going to play. So not something you should necessarily worry about. And obviously, Aaron Rodgers not playing. Okay, so starting off with the Falcons, they are currently scoring 19.4 points per game, which is 22nd in the NFL, giving up 21.1 points per game. And this team is leading their division.
Yeah.
Currently, and giving up more points than they are scoring. 201.5 passing yards per game and 139.3 on the ground. That's their only good stat, fourth in the NFL. The Jets are giving up 140.3 rushing yards per game, which is right around what the Falcons are getting per game. Yeah, 31st in the NFL. But the Jets are giving up 183 yards through the air. Now, I think it's very obvious we're starting Bijan Robinson at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I think Bijan should have a great game.
Yeah.
Drake London is a bit more difficult. Now, I think he will be the lead target recipient.
Mm-hmm.
How many targets will that be? How many times are they going to throw the ball against a Jets defense that going into the game, they know that is the one thing that they're good at. They can't stop the run, which is the one thing the Falcons are good at. I see Ritter throwing the ball maybe 15, 16 times.
Yeah.
How many of those does he complete, and how many of those go to Drake London? So that makes it extremely difficult. I'm honestly going to say bench him this week, even regardless of what he can do. It's just a tough defense. Tough matchup for him. It's going to be Sauce Gardner on him. If not, it's going to be DJ Reed, right?
Yeah.
DJ Reed isn't. So, I mean, that's going to be tough. And they have a good pass rush. Ritter's not good. We're going to see a lot of Bijan Robinson and probably Tyler Algier and Cordero Patterson in this one.
Mm-hmm.
With that, I think it goes to be said the Falcons tight ends are not startable in this game.
No.
And so, yeah. On to and Youngwick Koo. He's startable.
Yes.
I think Bijan and Koo, and if you're extremely, extremely desperate, Algier.
Yeah.
Just because they're going to run the ball that amount.
Yeah.
Now, just to give a little bit of insight on the Falcons snap share from the last week, Bijan had 63% of the snaps, 39. Algier was out there for 29%. Cordero Patterson 26%, and Keith Smith was also out there for 18%. So at this point, Tyler Algier only got 2 more snaps than Cordero Patterson. So maybe don't really trust him because you don't know if it's going to be Algier or Patterson. And Drake London, obviously the leader in the receiver room, and I believe Derek touched on it last week. Jonnu Smith was out. Okay. So if you want a little bit more depth into the Falcons tight end room, Kyle Pitts played 50% of the snaps. Jonnu played 35%. McCole Pruitt played 26%. And Parker Hesse played 37%. So there's a little more to it when we say the Falcons tight ends are not startable.
Yeah.
Literally, it's 4 of them now. So good luck with that.
Yeah.
On to the Jets side of the ball, where pretty much the only 2 guys that, well, I guess you could throw a third in there. Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, and Tyler Conklin.
Yeah.
And Breece Hall is out there 66% of the time last week. Dalvin Cook 33%. I think you kind of have to start Breece, even if he does not get it done in the run game. You're going to throw him the ball at the very least 5 or 6 times. Whatever he does with that, you got to hope for the best, but he will get the volume. He will get targets out of the backfield. The Falcons are unfortunately only giving up 112 yards per game on the ground, so it might be one of the ones that is a far from efficient game from Breece, kind of like we saw last week. He only got like 25 yards on the ground.
Yeah.
I mean, the Falcons do have a good defense. They're giving up 21.1 points per game, 209 through the air, 112 on the ground, 16. It's going to be a tough game for the Jets.
Yeah.
Last week, we saw Garrett Wilson, despite everything, have a good finish. And this week, I mean, we have a whole lot of buys and injuries. It's hard to say start Garrett Wilson, especially knowing the volume he gets. And he is out there 95% of the time compared to the next best, Xavier Gibson, 72%. Oh, no, I take that back. Jason Brownlee was out there 98% of the time. Regardless, he's going to get all of the target share. Garrett Wilson is like the only thing keeping this Jets team watchable for their fans. Tyler Conklin this past week, I mean, it seems like the last 2 weeks, or he has always stayed around 60%. And the last 2 weeks, it's been Jeremy Ruckert playing about 40%.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we see Conklin getting some targets, but at this point, I mean, Tim Boyle is just not good. So
No, he's not.
It's difficult, but yeah, that's really about it for this game. It's probably going to be an ugly one. One of the lower over-unders that I've seen. And yeah, under might hit.
Yeah, well, that will take us to our next game, which I think should actually be an interesting one. It's the Cardinals at the Steelers. The Steelers' defense is in the lower end of the NFL, at least yardage-wise. 24th in the league, giving up 236 yards through the air, and 21st against the run, giving up 118 yards. I like the Kyler Murray start this week. James Conner has been underwhelming since returning from his stint on the IR. I just look at it as one of those things where if you have survived up to this point without James Conner and you can survive this week, like if you have another option, another viable option, I would go there until James Conner shows me he can have another good week. But again, with buys, if you have to put him in the lineup, it is against a defense that hasn't been the greatest against the run. So it could be a good week for James Conner to get his bearings back. I hope he does, but it's been a little shaky since he returned. In the receiver room, Hollywood, as we talked about previously in this episode, is questionable with that heel injury. He finally had a very good week with Kyler. He had a couple just abysmal weeks when Kyler first returned. Again, if he plays, the Steelers' pass defense is not good. I do like the Hollywood start, but if he does not play, Greg Dortch, the Dortch Torch, we might have to light it up again. We just might have to. I honestly, if Hollywood does not play, I like a Greg Dortch flex play this week. He has been getting crazy volume. Rondale Moore, Michael Wilson, they just don't get, or Rondale Moore hasn't gotten enough volume. Michael Wilson coming back off injury. I don't know.
Actually,
Is he missing again?
Michael Wilson is out.
Yeah, Michael Wilson's out again, so he's not an option. But even with that, Rondale Moore, I'm still just, like, I think it was either last week or the week before, he got one target, caught it for a 45-yard touchdown, but
Yeah.
that is extremely dangerous if you play that game. The volume is just not there for a consistent week like that in a starting lineup. And Zach Ertz is no longer an Arizona Cardinal. He is going to join a contender, and you know what? Good for him. He deserves the chance to go for a Super Bowl again. That's a respectable play by the Cardinals. But that makes all Trey McBride fantasy owners extremely happy. He's questionable for this game with the groin. If he plays, he's an absolute start. Trey McBride has been very good this season for the Cardinals, and I see that continuing, especially for a team that doesn't have too many. Like, Greg Dortch has been good for the Cardinals. You know what I mean. Greg Dortch, they don't have too many real weapons there. So,
No, yeah.
Trey McBride's one of the few. And the Steelers side of the ball. Deontay Johnson doesn't want to be there, supposedly. George Pickens didn't want to be there earlier in the season. Chase Claypool is no longer there because he didn't want to be there. You know what? To be fair to all these guys, if Kenny Pickett was my quarterback, I don't think I'd want to be there either. It's just Kenny Pickett is not good at football. The Cardinals are 30th against the rush. They're 15th against the pass. I like starting Najee and Jaylen Warren this week. I think they're both going to get ample workload and probably have a lot of opportunity to succeed. Between Deontay and George Pickens, I think Deontay is the better play. It could be one of those, not to compare it to the A.J. Brown situation, but, Deontay comes out and complains. Hyper target him, please. He absolutely should. There's no reason he's not getting 6-7 targets at least a game. Deontay I like. George Pickens, if you have to throw him out there because of the buys, that's a lot more of a risk, but it's understandable. And Pat Freiermuth, he just reappeared. I'm starting Pat Freiermuth. Like, I'm throwing him straight into the lineup this week. You don't get 11 targets, 120 yards, 9 catches, and just fade back into the abyss again. At least hopefully. But
Gabe Davis might have a word for you.
I don't know why you would say that to me. But
You said
It is okay.
I mean,
That really is the Gabe Davis Award.
it
Absolutely,
is
that's the Gabe
game.
Davis Award.
We've seen it. Hopefully, he doesn't Gabe Davis. This is all I'm saying. It is possible.
Well,
Gabe Davis has done it many a times.
Yeah, and you know what? Thankfully, Gabe Davis can't do it to us this week because
He cannot. He's on bye. You are safe from Gabe Davis this week.
Yeah.
All right. So. Okay, it's the rock truck. All right, my last morning game. Yes, my last morning game. I have the Colts going into Tennessee to take on the Titans. This is the only one I have this week of two teams that previously played, so we have a little bit of insight as to what these guys might try to do.
Mhm.
The Colts are currently they're currently scoring 24.5 points per game, which puts them at 8th in the league, giving up 24.4 points per game, which is 27th in the league. It's right. I mean, every game they play is...
It's impressive
like
they score that
2D wire.
much with Gardner Minshew. That's impressive.
Minshew Mania, man.
Mhm.
Speaking of, they have 220 passing yards per game, which is 18th in the league, and 121 rush yards per game. Which, if you did not watch the first half of the season, you may be concerned that this is at stake with Jonathan Taylor going out. But you'd be surprised to know that the first time these two teams played, Zach Moss had 23 carries for 165 yards and 2 touchdowns, also caught 2 passes for 30 yards, giving him 33.5 fantasy points. They will also be facing Zach Moss again this week. I'm throwing Zach Moss in any lineup I have
Yes.
that I could start Zach Moss in. I think it is going to be a big week for him. Now, the Titans are currently giving up 110 yards on the ground per game. They were averaging much better when they played the Colts the first time. A big reason that went up is because they played the Colts.
Yeah.
I think the Colts are going to impose their will. I think the Colts are the better team.
Yeah.
I see Zach Moss having a big game. Now, the first time that Michael Pittman played this team, he got 5 catches for 52 yards, giving him 10.2 points. It goes to mention that they also had Kevin Byard at that time. Now, that's not... He is a safety, granted, but that's a big part of that defense that is now gone. Tennessee's giving up 224.5 passing yards per game, which is 19th in the NFL. I think it'll be a good game from Pittman. I think that Josh Downs should have a good game.
Mhm.
In their first matchup, he had 6 catches for 97 yards, 15.7 points.
Yeah.
I think he might not replicate that, but I think he goes over 10.
Yeah.
And I could see Pittman very well getting 8-9 catches in this game.
Yeah.
Easily. But, so yeah, I've talked about these guys quite a bit. Should be obvious that these are the guys on the Indianapolis Colts who I am starting. Matt Gay, their kicker, is a really good start in my opinion.
Mhm.
And honestly, if you want to start the Colts defense,
Yeah.
I don't really hate that.
Yeah.
Titans offense has not been, since we saw that first big blow up from Will Levis, it's kind of come back down to earth in a crashing form. They are averaging 183 passing yards per game. It's not something I'm really shaking in my boots over. And 102 yards on the ground. So obviously they know they have to stop Derrick Henry. They play him every year. And I just don't think Will Levis, even with DeAndre Hopkins there, they might score a couple times, but I think there's going to be a lot of sacks and turnovers for the Colts defense in this game. So I think they're a good start. Completely going to the Titans side of the ball. They are averaging 16.8 points per game. Not very good. 27th in the NFL.
Mhm.
Currently giving up 20.4 points per game, which is 10th, but they're 4-7. They can't score. Like I said, 181.3 passing yards per game and 102.6 on the ground. In the first game that they played, Derrick Henry had 13 carries for 43 yards and 3 catches for 19. 9.2 points. The Colts clearly know what to do to, at the very least, bottle him up.
Yeah.
Now, he always has that potential to break out a big run. I think you can't really afford to sit Derrick Henry this week. But just looking back at the past, it is very possible that he scores under 10 points, especially with the way that this offense has been performing. They're going to load the box and make Will Levis pass.
Yeah.
Now, saying that, I do not believe Will Levis was the quarterback in their first matchup. It was Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah.
So that, just keeping that in mind when I'm reading this stat line, DeAndre Hopkins had 8 catches for 140 yards, giving him 22 points. It is a different quarterback. This is a Colts team that is playing for a wild card berth and also playing for control of the division. They're not too far behind, only 2 games behind Jacksonville. So I think D-Hop is startable, maybe flex worthy.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to be tough. There's 2 guys you have to stop. Now, I say that. Tyjae Spears in their first matchup had only 7 carries for 34 yards, but he scored a touchdown, and that touchdown run was pretty insane. He also caught 4 passes for 35 yards, was more effective than Derrick Henry in that matchup, scored 16.9 points. If you're in desperation mode, yet again, I think he's a better option than a few like Tyler Algier. I think Spears might be a better option. And these are unfortunately things we have to talk about with 6 teams on bye this week. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, Derrick Henry's obvious. You have to just put him out there, but just keeping in your mind that it's possible Spears might yet again be more effective in this game.
Yeah.
Spears is a desperation play. D-Hop, like I said, is a flex if you need to. It's possible that he gets home in this one, but it's hard to imagine with their recent offensive turmoil. They weren't able to do anything against the Carolina Panthers. Treylon Burks being back in this one, I mean, still not starting him.
No.
I don't really want to start Chigakonkwo either. And I mean, Nick Folk is a good kicker, but the Titans just haven't been scoring. It's along the lines of the Blake Groupie thing, but the Titans just haven't been.
Yeah.
So I mean, that one's hard. Maybe look elsewhere. But yeah, that's really it for this one.
All right, well, I will finish it out, and yeah, we are going to break this thing up into 2 episodes, so we will take a short break and then come back with another episode and finish our afternoon, Sunday, Monday night games. But our last morning game is the Chargers at the Patriots in what should be a fairly easy win for the Chargers. It should be. I don't know if it will be. The Patriots defense is actually pretty solid. That's really the only thing they have going in New England. They're 16th against the pass, giving up 223 yards, and 7th against the run, giving up 94. The Chargers, as we know, do not run the ball efficiently by any means, but with the play of Quentin Johnston and Jalen Guyton, Austin Eckler's still the number 2 receiver there, out the backfield too. I mean, Justin Herbert, every time I've said I don't like the Justin Herbert start, it has never been a knock to Justin Herbert. It has simply been his lack of weapons outside of Keenan Allen. It's just unbelievable that this happens to the Chargers every single season. They thought they fixed it by drafting Quentin Johnston for if Mike Will or Keenan Allen misses time. No, he is another Jag. at least
they
as of
drafted
now.
him over Zay Flowers and Jordan Addison.
Yeah, it's just tough looking back, but Justin Herbert, we're obviously starting. Austin Eckler, we're going to have to start. Doesn't matter how inefficient on the ground he is, he's going to get volume out of the backfield. Keenan Allen, we're obviously starting. I'm shying away from Jalen Guyton and Quentin Johnston. I'm not starting either of them. Gerald Everett is the guy I am interested in. I think he cracks right outside my top 10. Like last week, he played 64% of snaps. He caught a touchdown. Caught all 4 of his targets for 43 yards. But we've also seen weeks like against the Jets a couple weeks ago. Played 55% of snaps, 2 catches for 18 yards on 2 targets. It almost seems like 2/3 at least of Justin Herbert's targets go to Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler. It may be higher than that, to be honest. So I just think there's other options out there, but Gerald Everett is right on the cusp of like a guy I would consider starting. But if you have tight end on bye, tight end on injury, and your waiver wire is extremely thin, I don't hate the Gerald Everett pickup. I think it's a risk, but looking at some of the guys on the waiver, he is near the top of it for me. And the Patriots. The Chargers are the worst team against the pass in the NFL, and I don't think it's going to matter.
Well, they said they're starting Bailey Zappi and have a bunch of packages for Malik Cunningham and don't plan to play Mac Jones at all.
I don't think it matters that the Chargers are the worst team in the league against the pass. Bailey Zappi is not good. Malik Cunningham, we haven't seen enough in regular season games, but how they've used him, and as Schiff mentioned, when they say like packages, I assume they're going to use a lot of wildcat, things like that, try to use him explosive out of the backfield. He may throw a couple passes, but
yeah, we'll see.
Really the only player I'm starting from the Patriots is Mondre. I don't feel comfortable starting any of the receivers. Hunter Henry. Oh, sorry?
Douglas isn't a bad player.
No, he's not. He's not a bad play. But he also has a concussion. He's not even playing this week. So that goes out the window for us. The only other play. That's what I'm saying.
Well, there's that.
Yeah, he has a concussion. He's missing. Devontae Parker will be the number 1 receiver there. So, again, Mondre is the only guy I feel comfortable playing. If you're in super deep formats, like if you're in a 12-man 3 receiver, I'm considering Devontae Parker. But a normal league, no. I just don't think anyone from the Patriots outside of Mondre is worth starting.
I agree.
But that will do it for our Thursday night recap, injury report, and our Sunday morning previews. Like I said, we will be back to cover the rest of the games. As always, we appreciate all the support, any likes, any comments for any advice, or just any comments on some of our opinions. You think one of us makes a terrible take? Drop it in the comments and let us know, man. We will, we're here for criticism. We can bounce back off it. So any comment you guys may have, feel free to drop it. We will be back to finish the rest of the Sunday games as well as the Monday game. So we will see you next time.